Welcome, SFL Nation, to the Season 10 schedule release show on the SFL Network on Twitch TV. Settle in, get some food and a drink. It's go time. Tonight we have an esteemed panel alongside me. Happy to bring them on board tonight for what truly will be a memorable night. First, wide receiver for the Queen City Corsairs and one of the league's top commentators and supporters, Chris Curtis. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to a landmark 10th season of the Simulation Football League, and it gets started tonight.
What have you been doing in the last 3 weeks?
Watching the signings board light up like a Christmas tree. I find it appropriate based on the season we're in. And working on some Rocket League stuff in the background and basically working retail. So busy life, but, it's going to get better as SFL gets going again.
Got any big streams coming up you want to promote?
Not at the moment. No, it kind of slows down about this time because you have Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Yep.
It won't get going until probably the second or third month of the year. So.
All right. Well, there you go. Enjoy the relaxation.
Yeah.
The linebacker for the Mexico City Aztecs, Jack Brown, otherwise known as the Arupshurtan, and I don't think I'm going to get that wrong too often this year now that it's burned into my brain. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Cam. Again, as Curtis said, I'm really excited for this season, and I feel as if my Aztecs are going to do really well.
You mentioned that you've been a little under the weather. What's been going on? I was under the weather last week too.
Well, I just had like a really big Molly 1 conference yesterday, and being around 1,000 teenagers, you're bound to catch something eventually.
All right, there you go. You can catch all sorts of things from young people. They're so gross. I can say that now because I'm old as dirt.
Cam doesn't like children, confirmed.
Speaking of old as dirt, I really shouldn't introduce him this way since he's the first time he's been on one of our shows. Mike Daggs, the father of 3 in the SFL. How are you, Mike?
Well, it was good until that introduction, but I'll take what I can get, I guess. I am the rookie. I was expecting some hazing, so there you go. You didn't waste any time.
There you go. Mike's a tight end for Queen City, and where are your sons playing, and what positions are they playing this year?
So there's 2 on the London Knights. We have Jeffrey Daggs at free safety and Zach Daggs at kicker. And then returning for his second season with St. Louis is Nick Daggs is transitioning over to safety.
All right. Well, there you have it. Last but not least, the championship commentator himself, the owner of the Houston Hyenas, the Dr. DR Sim. How are you, Damon? Damon forgot to unmute his mic. There it is.
Hey, buddy. I'm good. How's it going, everyone?
It's good, man. Have you got your mileage planned out for season 10 championship game in April?
Oh, ready to go. Wherever headquarters is at, I'm gonna be there. I don't care if I gotta catch a plane.
I'm moving to Portland, so.
Oh, that's fine. I always wanted to go to Portland. There's nothing wrong with visiting the city of roses.
I mean, which Portland are we talking about? Oregon or Maine? That's the real question.
I hope Portland.
Maine.
Oregon. No. Oh yeah, good lobster. Good lobster. That'd be even worth the trip,
There you go. Well, here's how it's going to work tonight, everybody out there in SFL Nation. Happy to have you here in the chat. I just want to run through some names real quick that I see. Warhammer 62, Mighty RX, Ramos Lynn, Mahmoud Ajalani, Crazy Eights, Simmer Down Bruh, Flava 2K, True Shot Collar, Cape Saint, DR Sim, who's obviously
Can you
here.
just say Simmer Down Bro one more time?
Simmer Down Bruh.
Okay. Yep.
I love
that
name.
works.
Yeah,
That's
I love
pretty
that
good.
name.
High Flying Dwarf, Orb father. Boy, I don't know who he's a father to, but God bless him. Pat Ketsa.
Right.
CP3 Buddha, which is Aaron Arrington, CC25Y, Kenny G, and many, many more in the house as well. I'm having problem KJC, Volcano 4. We are all here in the SFL Nation Twitch chat room. So here's how it's going to work, guys. We're going to give you the first week of the schedule right off the bat. We're going to discuss it a little bit, and then we're going to break down individual schedules team by team. If you want to see your team schedule next, keep hammering us in the chat, and we will be sure to get your team on ASAP. I will say that before we get into the schedule reveal, well, actually, you know what? We're going to do week 1 first, and then I will get to my announcements. So you guys, are you guys ready? Everybody ready out there?
Let's go, Bo.
I mean, I think we're
about as ready as I can be.
All right. Well,
let's get it going.
here is week 1 of season 10. The season opener is the 4-time champion Queen City Corsairs against the defending champion Mexico City Aztecs. It is the first time the two teams will get to play. Now, you might see that the day of that game is to be determined. We're still working some things out, but we expect that it will actually not be the 7th. It'll be sooner than that, so you're going to get some football action maybe a little bit sooner than you might have thought, SFL Nation. As we look at that game, I'll get to the rest of the slate in a moment, but let's get some reaction from a couple of Corsairs first on being the traveling team to the defending champs. Let's start with Chris.
I mean, we get to go up against Ray Bentley in his house, Estadio Azteca. That's going to be a big game right off the bat. Mexico City, I think there are some fans and some players in Mexico City that still feel like they have something to prove, that they're not just a Ray Bentley show. They get to go up against a powerhouse Queen City team, which is a perennial power, and prove that in that game. So that's going to be one that Mexico City still, I think, has a chip on their shoulder, and Queen City is going to have to be the one to knock that chip off their shoulder.
Oh, now before I get to Mike's analysis, everybody's already starting to pick up on something they've seen on the schedule. What is that? Interconference play just randomly thrown in there? What is happening right now? Yes, it is. We'll get to that in a moment. Mike, how does it feel going to Mexico City? Did you watch the championship game? What do you think of those Aztecs?
I did. Yeah, Ray Bentley trucking over people like they were school children. I mean, it's fun to watch them. It's going to be even more fun to beat them. I mean, what better way to kick off my rookie season than in prime time live on Twitch against the defending SFL champs? So it'll be, it's unfortunate to have to hand them that first loss, but someone's got to do it. It may as well be Queen City.
I mean, right there with you on that one.
Now, for those of you that that are wondering or maybe concerned, of course, we used to have cross conference in the SFL. There were some issues with players being created over other players and players not being unique and playbooks being wrong and all that stuff. I can assure you that all of that has been resolved. Otherwise, we never would have brought this to the stage. And the SFL has been very hard at work and has discovered something new in terms of all pro football and the editor functionality and all sorts of hidden gems and secrets that has made this possible. Have done our due diligence and testing, and everything's working great. So you're going to see some matchups that you may not have anticipated. And I think I saw Ramos Lynn right at the beginning of this week 1 unveil. What did he say? He said, "Did anybody see it? Kill me."
Kill me, yeah.
to play Queen City right off the bat. That'll be his first opportunity to play those Corsairs. All right, Mr. Aztec linebacker, what do you think? 4-time champions for the first time.
Well, Queen City, do you want a front hand or backhand?
All right. That's where we're going with this. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
we know that we only have one person to stop on your roster. So, if we can do that, then I think we got this in the bag. No.
are we dropping diss tracks in our latest with all this? Anyways, um, anyways, yeah, I mean, to kick off my second season to go in against Queen City at home, that's going to be a wild game. Our fans are going to be super elated about this. And Ray, you'll finally get to truck some Corsairs. Actually, what's he saying about this in the chat real quick? I just want to ask.
Who are you talking about?
Bentley? Bentley does not look. I don't think he's in Twitch chat at the moment.
No, he is. Orb Father. Ray Bentley
that's
stared
Orb
into
then.
the
Okay.
abyss, and the abyss ran away, afraid for his life. It's best to just not even pay.
No, he went off topic.
Oh, well, see, you're in a completely different chat. But nobody can keep up with all these chats right now.
Right.
But let's look at the rest of the Week 1 slate and get Damon's reaction. Sunday afternoon at 3, a handful of games. San Antonio at Dallas, Texas matchup there to start. Houston gets Sioux Falls for the second straight season in Week 1. That is an interconference game. St. Louis is at Chicago to take on the Wildcats. Tulsa and Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma rivalry for the first time. London opens up their franchise history with a trip to Atlanta. Sunday afternoon, Vancouver and Alaska, and Tallahassee and Carolina, a couple of good heated rivalries there in the afternoon. And you may say, Cameron, where is the Sunday night game at 7 o'clock? Every week there will be a Sunday night 7 o'clock game. It will be fan voted. Out of the 7 Sunday afternoon games, one of them each week will be flexed into the Sunday afternoon slate. And so we're very excited to introduce that concept into the mix. So that's going to be a lot of fun, getting your teams to rally behind, pushing you into the primetime spotlight with yours truly on the call every Sunday night during the SFL season. Damon, what do you think of this Week 1 slate here? What catches your eye outside of the opening night game?
San Antonio, Dallas. Then you got Vancouver, Alaska. That Vancouver, Alaska, as we saw last season, has become a great rivalry between both of these two teams, and both of them are from the cold, and it's going to be cold come January 7th up in the Southwest.
Now, I last but not least, failed to mention Monday night's primetime game on Twitch.tv. You've got James Richards and Ryan Moody's Indianapolis Red Devils going up against Ryan Moatz's San Francisco Sharks to cap off Week 1. Curtis, this is going to be, if that turns out being your game on Monday night, this is going to be as high profile as they come.
Yeah, it'll be good as far as two high-profile owners. James Richards been around a while in this league, no doubt about that. Ryan Moatz, a co-owner of the league as well. I am very, very excited to see how their two expansion teams get into this matchup. One of these teams is going to make history on that night in the Bay. Who's it going to be?
Jack, any thoughts on any of these other Week 1 matchups here before we head on to preview some teams?
No, not really. Most everything that I would have said would have already been said by these other folks here. But also another rivalry to look at is St. Louis versus Chicago. It's going to be interesting to see how Chicago comes off that championship game loss at home against the Gladiators, who are looking to continue a rebuild from last season. I think they won their last 2 in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
They've retooled quite a bit too. Talking about St. Louis, and I think they were a better team than they played last season. And I think they're one of those teams again who has something to prove against a very, very good Chicago roster.
Well, they did win 3 out of their last 4 games. I mean, at the end of the season, they did come on strong. It'll be obviously tough for them to go up against the runner-up of the championship game to open up the season on the road. But, winners of 3 of the last 4, you can't just deny that.
And Damon, correct me if I'm wrong, but Houston has never lost to Sioux Falls. Is that right?
See, Cam, this is what I need you to put some respect on the name of the Houston Hyenas.
Didn't I just do that?
You do this every schedule release. I have never lost to Sioux Falls, and I never will.
What?
Ooh,
But
okay.
I said that. That's what I said.
You
I mean,
said Houston has not won versus
No,
Sioux
he
Falls.
said lost. He said
Yeah.
lost.
Well, maybe I just wanted to get that out. That's
Check
just
yourself. Check yourself at
Hey, Simeon.
Check
Proverbial
yourself before you
sim-
respect yourself. How's that?
simulated door.
I'm sorry. I love you, Cam.
That's that's all right. Houston gets to open up against the Sparrows
yeah.
for the second time. Yeah, Houston beat Sioux Falls in Sioux Falls in week 1 of last season. I am
are
we are
4-0 against Sioux Falls.
4-0.
4-0.
Yeah. We are taking schedule requests, but want to show some respect to the defending champs, so we want to put the Mexico City Aztecs schedule on the board. Here is what the defending champs will be facing in Season 10. It's on your screen. Versus Queen City in Week 1, then Mexico City has a 2-game road trip. Oh, and look at it! Week 3, a championship rematch at Chicago on Monday Night Football, January 22nd. Ooh, that's going to be so good.
That is fantastic.
Woo! Mexico City the following week is back at home against the London Knights in an international battle. But obviously the championship rematch highlighting that schedule. Mexico City plays 4 of 5 on the road between weeks 2 through 6. They finish out with 3 games at home: Tallahassee, San Antonio, and Atlanta. So that the teeth of that schedule definitely in that 3 to 6 range. Chicago, Queen City, Tallahassee, very, very challenging, difficult opponents there for the Aztecs. And you might notice that the Twitch and YouTube dates and times are not scheduled all the way through. The broadcast team will be meeting to schedule games 4 weeks at a time this year. So around week 2 or 3, we'll get the next 4 weeks worth of games, what networks they're going to be on, times, dates, all that good stuff. But for now, just the first 4 weeks mapped out 100% on the schedule, because we don't want to get caught with a bunch of snoozers in prime time. I'll start with Curtis. You were, or actually, no, you know what? I'll start with Demond. He was here to call that championship game, and we see the rematch in week 3 in Chicago. I don't know how Mexico City's going to get out of that one alive.
I know how they're gonna get out of it alive. It's gonna be another body bag. That's what it's gonna be. Long as Ray Bentley's on the field, man, I see Mexico City, man, being on the down this season here. I believe that they will break the curse as far as teams that make it to the championship game and doesn't make it the next following year. They will, make it to the playoffs the next following year. So they will be there. I have that much faith in Mexico City. Now, I do dislike that they're no longer in the West, but I'm sort of glad.
Mike, what stands out to you about the Aztec schedule?
Well, obviously that loss in week 1 against Queen City, but after that, it looks like they got quite a tough run. I mean, what do they got? 6 out of the next 8 games are all on the road.
Yeah.
If they can make it through that relatively unscathed, finishing 3 at home, we'll see. I'm not sure I agree that they're going to be the same team as last year, but you never know. They very well could be. Is Ray Bentley still going to be able to crash through guys, or is he going to be covered in bruises still from all the trucking he did last season and unable to pull it off again?
Chris, how about at Queen City, at Tallahassee, back-to-back weeks? That's good. That's a grind.
Yeah, that's going to be a grind for sure, and not to mention the fact that they play Queen City first. They play Queen City twice in the first 5 weeks. That plus this is not going to be an easy schedule for Mexico City to be able to wade through, and if they do make the playoffs, it's going to be a feat. There is no champion's advantage to this schedule that I can see. Looking at it all the way through, they are going to have to fight their way to an opportunity to defend this title.
All right, with that, let's see who the chat. Oh, I'm telling you, the first one I saw, CC25Y, Carolina wants to see our schedule, so
All
we're
right.
going to give it to you. Let's take a look at the Carolina Skyhawks schedule for Season 10. The Skyhawks open up against Tallahassee and then follow that up with Mexico City. We saw that through the first two slides. Now, the rest of them. Tallahassee is the beginning and end of Carolina's schedule. There is only one other matchup that features Week 1 and Week 12. So that's an interesting wrinkle for Carolina. They've got a pretty balanced schedule throughout. 4 of their first 6 are at home. They play Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, a team that they've played quite a bit in their history in cross conference, so they'll be making some Oklahoma trips there. Chris, we'll go back around the horn. What do you see out of Carolina's schedule here? I know a lot of as soon as conference alignment came out last night, everybody was giving Carolina some fits and some problems, but they're retooled and it's a brand new SFL season. But what are the positives and negatives here for them?
Well, the positives I see is just out of their actual. There's a lot of rookies on this roster. There's a lot of rookies that are trying to make a big impact. This is like you said, a different team than we saw last season, and they have a chance to make some waves against some teams that didn't necessarily do so hot. Plus, they've got London twice, which is an expansion team. We don't know how they're going to play yet. This is a Carolina Skyhawks team that's looking for a little bit of redemption after a bit of a disappointing season last season, where they were in games they could not find a way to put the recipe together in the fourth quarter to win a lot of those games. With this new retooled system they have going on, could be an opportunity for them to make a really big impact in that Eastern Conference.
Mike, Tallahassee and Mexico City are their first 2 opponents, which is alarming. But both games are at home. Mike, if you had to choose, which game does Carolina pull a shocker in, or do you see no chance at either of those games despite it being a new season?
You know, I mean, it is a new season. They finished, unfortunately, 1-11 last year, the worst record in the league. I think they're due for a big rebound. I think they're going to be a lot better than people are probably going to give them credit for. I'd expect to see them open up that season against Tallahassee at home and pull out the major upset victory of the week.
Jack, you weren't around, but Mexico City and Carolina, albeit a brief history, do have a history. Matt Wilson made his first fourth quarter comeback of his career against Carolina. The Aztecs have never traveled to Carolina, so this will be an interesting matchup for Mexico City. But on to Carolina's complete schedule, where do you see the toughest challenge being?
Well, it's going to be hard to pick out which one's going to be the toughest challenge, because Carolina is in probably, as many people saying after the schedule release, a conference realignment. They're in probably the toughest division in the SFL this year. And I would probably say their greatest challenge is going to be week 4 against at Queen City. And, you know, that along with the London game, there's going to be some very difficult games, but I do believe that the Skyhawks are due for a major rebound. I don't think they're going to continue just kind of at the bottom of the league, and I think they could make some noise and could even be a bit of a trap game.
All right, we've got a lot of Vancouver love. Vancouver is coming up shortly. However, I do feel bad for the couple of Brits over there in London. I feel like we should let them. We should give them an opportunity to see their schedule, so Liam can. Although now that I think about it, it seems kind of like he's blackmailing me to show his schedule, so that he will work on the website tomorrow. But I guess blackmail works. So let's take a look at the London Knights next, and we'll do Vancouver after that. For the London Knights, they've got a pretty balanced schedule. No big home or road swings, but there you see it. Their home opener is against the Vancouver Legion, who have to fly more than 9 hours all the way to the UK to take on the Knights. That'll be the first game of a Monday night doubleheader in Week 2, since there will not be a Saturday night game that week due to conflicts with the NFL playoff schedule that we're trying to stay away from. So that will be a 6 Central kickoff with Vancouver being the host. So see, Vancouver, I took care of you. You got to see at least one of your games here on this slide. In weeks 7 through 10, absolutely brutal. Atlanta, Tallahassee, Mexico City, Queen City, back to back to back to back. London also gets the expansion Indianapolis Red Devils on their schedule. That is in week 6. Damon, let's start with you. What stands out to you about the London Knights schedule, their first season?
Well, if London can get past the top 3 powerhouses over there, well, actually 4, Atlanta, now Mexico City, Tallahassee, and Queen City, if they can either split those games between those teams or even come away with 2 victories or against maybe 2 of them or so, they could be in a hunt, the playoff hunt or so. But it's tough over there in the East, man. You got Tallahassee, Atlanta, Queen City, and Mexico City. Those are some playoff teams. Those teams have been in the playoff the last 2 seasons, so pick your poison. But that's pretty much all I have. They got to win some ball games versus those top 4 teams.
And London gets the Western Conference champion runner-up on their cross-conference schedule, which is not too kind. However, Vancouver has to travel all the way there to get the job done. Mike, Queen City and London play 2 times in the last 3 weeks. That is the only matchup on the league schedule that features the same matchup 2 times in the final 3 weeks of the season. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm disappointed that I have to wait all the way until March to be able to go up against my 2 sons that play for the London Knights. But, to be able to play them twice in 3 weeks at the end and, ruin their days both of those weeks.
It'd be big for the playoffs.
Good things come for those who wait. I mean, England may have a queen, but Buffalo is the queen. Queen City's going to win both of those games.
All right, Chris, what do you think about that?
Could be a pretty interesting dinner conversation between you and your sons during those weeks. I'm kind of looking forward to the audio stuff.
Yeah, they won't be talking.
It was like
go ahead.
It was like last year when Shanvar sent Cole to his room after championship.
Yep, exactly.
I heard from Shan after that, and he said that his kid was he was upset that he even would say that in public. Anyway, Chris, what do you think about London?
I do notice one thing. Vancouver, you said they have to fly about 9 hours. Not only that, but if I'm not mistaken, if I saw my schedule right, yes, they are actually going to be week 1. Vancouver's in Alaska, so they have to fly from Anchorage to London. So it's even going to be longer than that even, although Alaska and Vancouver not geographically long ways away from each other, but still going to be an even longer flight than originally thought. With that said, London has to take care of business against the teams that are of, I won't call lower class because that's not the way I do things, but I will say that are less powerful power ranking wise than a team like a Tallahassee, Mexico City, Queen City. They got to take care of business against those teams like a Carolina, like possibly in Atlanta, like possibly in Indianapolis, because we don't know how they're going to play just yet. So if they can do that, they have, I would put them at an outside shot of the playoffs right now, but I don't see them faring well yet against the powerhouses of the Eastern Conference, like the Tallahassees and the Queen Cities of, just to name a couple.
So if you're adding it up at home, Vancouver's spending a lot of time in an airplane at the beginning of the season, and I hate to tell you, it's worse than you thought. The Vancouver Legion open up with 3 straight on the road, at Alaska, at London, at San Francisco, which is, it's crazy. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but that's the way.
Travel schedule.
That is the way that it panned out for Vancouver. But they get Tallahassee as their home opener in week number 4. That is a Saturday night Twitch primetime game, and Tallahassee and Vancouver just broke the Twitch chat room as they got the matchup that they wanted. That is the only home game for Vancouver in January. Then they got to go to Houston before things get a lot easier for the Legion. They've got San Antonio twice in 3 weeks between weeks 7 and 9. They end the season with Houston, Dallas, and Alaska, but they end the season with 5 of 7 at home. So a bit of a lopsided home and away schedule for Vancouver. Interesting how it ended up working out for the Legion. Curtis, your general thoughts as to what Vancouver is going to have to face this year, and which matchup are you most excited to see?
I mean, I'll talk about matchup in a second, but I do want to mention that they're going to be in an airplane more than they're going to be on the field practicing for the first 3 weeks of the season. With that said, I'm looking at that Vancouver-Tallahassee matchup, week 4. That's a matchup that is a cross-continent matchup, but it's one that's Tallahassee being this is one of those interconference matchups that we were talking about, that matchups that we may never get to see. Now we get to see it with interconference play introduced back into the fold. Tallahassee, very, very good team year in and year out. Vancouver really surprised some people in their first year in the league last season. And to see those two go head to head, I'm really, really excited for it. That's my matchup to watch.
All right, Jack, what do you think of the Legion's schedule here?
Well, first and foremost, I can definitely say I'm probably the most disappointed that we cannot settle the score with them from the Western Conference Championship game last season. But whatever. They definitely do have a pretty rough start, even with their home opener being against Tallahassee. Tallahassee, they're always going to be a toughie. And really just overall, they got a rough schedule that's going to really bang them up. But if they can last through the beginning of the season with those 3 road games, they're essentially set so that they can make a pretty decent playoff run with just the quality of teams they have.
Yeah, if Vancouver can get 1 or 2 of those first 3 or 4, they could be sitting in pretty good shape. Damon, you'll play Vancouver twice this year. You had your struggles with them last season. I'm sure you're out for blood.
Struggles? Hold on, Cam. I told you about that, man. Respect Houston, dude. We split 1-1.
Oh, sorry. I was just the most recent game, which was a loss for you, was stuck in my head.
Well, I don't care, man. We split 1-1. There was no troubles. They just out schemed us the second game. That's all.
Okay.
But no, man, it's going to be a great matchup. Someone stated in the comments here. Let me go back. VTAC, he said Houston to Dallas is a blink of the eye compared to week 1 and 2. Not sure as what he's meaning on that, but don't sleep on Houston and Dallas if you're 1 and 2, because we've been around very long, young man, and we know how to play this game. And week 1 just may be a test for Vancouver, as we know that Mighty will bring a strong defense with his team, as he does every season. But looking forward to the matchup, man, versus Vancouver this season. There's a large gap with a 5 week before we play them again down to week 10. So we'll be able to scout one another and see what each other has done once we come around to meet again in week 10. And hey, may the best team win, man.
He was saying, apparently in the chat, he was talking about the travel being so much worse to Alaska and London than it would be to Houston and Dallas. Damon, can you? I'm getting pretty hungry. Can you get me that giant chip that's on your shoulder?
Hey, you can have it, dude. I'll send it to you on hot ice, FedEx Express. You know me, man. I'm a rowdy guy, dude. I just like
51 flavors, and you decide to be salty.
Probably the best one.
Mike, give me your final thoughts on Vancouver before we move on here.
Well, season 9, Vancouver finished 7-5. Alaska finished 7-5. The last game of the season for Vancouver and Alaska is a head-to-head matchup. I mean, talk about playoff implications. It's going to come down to week 12 for these two teams and see which one comes out on top. It's going to be a fun game to watch all the way there right at the end of the season.
I'm seeing Kapows in the chat, so we're going to jump to the Sioux Falls Sparrows next. The Sparrows competing in the Central Division get Houston in week 1. We already know that. Their home opener is against Oklahoma City. The following Sunday, they've also got Atlanta on their cross-conference schedule. So Sioux Falls gets 2 cross-conference games in the first 3 weeks, and then it's conference play after that. Their first meetings with Chicago won't be until week 8, but then they take on Chicago in South Dakota the final week of the season. And you can see the rest of the conference schedule there. Pretty straightforward. Jack, your thoughts on Sioux Falls' schedule? Where is the trap for the Sparrows here?
Well, probably the biggest trap's gonna be that week 1 game against Houston. You know, as Simeon won't be quiet about, Houston, I don't think, has ever lost to Sioux Falls Sparrows, and so that's probably gonna be an automatic loss right there. And they got a pretty decently strength schedule. They don't have anything too ridiculous. However, you know, they haven't really made much of what I would say is an improvement. So I don't see them doing that much better than they did last year when they went 6-6 and barely missed the playoffs.
Mike, what are your thoughts here on Sioux Falls?
Well, Sioux Falls, I was actually just looking through the signings page. Do they even have a quarterback yet? It looks like they're quarterbackless.
They don't. I would.
They're going to need one.
Some sort of announcement on that the next day or two.
Yeah. So, assuming they sign themselves a quarterback, then they'll be competitive this season.
They'll automatically multiply their chances to win.
Yeah, it could help. It could actually help, I think. But I'm going to stick with the with the Week 12 matchup, that I was talking about last time too. They're going up against Chicago right there at the end, and it's good to see interesting competitive games like that all the way down in Week 12, and looking forward to seeing some of those. It looks like a tough schedule for them, but we'll see how it all shakes out.
Chris, those last two road games at St. Louis, at Indianapolis, if you take it at face value, those are 2 quote-unquote winnable road games, but those are also 2 of the more unknowns on Sioux Falls' schedule. That could end up being a brutal end.
That absolutely could. It's going to depend on what kind of role St. Louis and Indianapolis can get onto. But taking a look at their schedule actually repeats. 6, 7, and 8, they host St. Louis and Indianapolis, and then go to Chicago. They split up the repeat with Tulsa in week 9. Then they go to St. Louis, to Indianapolis, and then end hosting Chicago. So that's the most repeat schedule I've seen so far, the ones we've seen. And that giving St. Louis and Indianapolis a look at what they present in week 6 and 7 could spell doom for them weeks 10 and 11, depending on the preparation and things like that. But they have to take care of business against the interconference if they are going to make a run in that conference.
St. Louis has traditionally been better late than they have early, so having them on your schedule late is not necessarily where you want to be there with the Gladiators. I'm seeing the first thing I saw was Alaska Storm. We're going to hit up the Alaska Storm next. And the Storm back to the Western Conference. Here's what they look like. They don't have a single time during their season where they play 2 straight home games or 2 straight road games. They are, I believe, the only team that has
that
a
alternates
schedule like
week
that.
in and week out.
Yeah, alternating weeks. Look at week 11. Versus Queen City against Ash Odom, their former running back. It'll also be the first time the Storm have ever played Queen City, I believe. And you want to talk about a game that could potentially have playoff implications? My goodness, that's going to be a fun one in week 11. The other cross-conference game for Alaska is Atlanta Storm and Swarm, week 4, primetime, Monday night on twitch.tv. Curtis, what stands out to you about the Storm?
Storm, I mean, you basically called it out. The Queen City matchup has to be a game to put circle on your schedule, only because of the fact that game has implications not just for the conference that Queen City's in, but also for the conference that Alaska is in. They bookend the season with Vancouver, week 1 and week 12, and what we could see is a very different game 12 to game 1 if you're trying to compare side by side, depending on how the season shakes out. But a lot of fun games coming on Alaska's schedule. This is a question mark team for me, because even though they were able to perform fairly well late in the season last season, previously before that they'd had some issues late in the season. So it'll be, are they actually officially over that hump, or was it a fluke year they were able to perform in the latter part of that regular season? We'll find out.
All right, Damon, no trip to Alaska in January. You have to be breathing a sigh of relief. You'll go to Alaska in Week 9. What do you think about the Storm's slate of contests?
I'm extremely happy about that one because Houston is 0-2, 0-3, I believe, playing in the snow, and I can't deal with that. But Alaska, man, is one of the teams that does frighten me as an owner, because we have never beaten Alaska per se. But two players that you have on the screen here, which is Optimus Klein and Alex Dominguez, aka Big Sexy. If these two guys here keep it going for Alaska going to win some ball games. You know, we all seen what Klein can do as a receiver down the sideline, and we all know that Big Sexy causes a lot of havoc. Their road games are all warm games, as someone stated in the chat, which was an eye opener there. You know, they have one road game in the cold against Vancouver. Other than that, it's nowhere else where it's going to be cold for them. They're going to get some good as they travel. But I'm looking forward to that Week 2 matchup. I'm hoping that that's going to be the first game that Houston can win versus Alaska, and if it's in the snow, it'll be bittersweet.
Astute observation there on Alaska's road trips. Hey, love the aggressiveness from Lorm Crumfast for the Dallas Roughnecks. I gotta give him some serious props. So let's do Tulsa. I'm just kidding. Let's do Dallas next. Dallas Roughnecks schedule. They start at home against San Antonio and then at Queen City. It's a rematch of the Season 7 championship game where the Dallas Roughnecks, Season 8, the Season 8 championship game, when the Dallas Roughnecks had Mac Wavy Jr. as their quarterback. Dallas hosted Queen City and came up short. That is going to be a very entertaining one, as Queen City's got just a show-stopping schedule. That's at Queen City in Week 2. 4 of their 5 games are on the road between Weeks 2 through 6, including trips to Alaska and to Vancouver back-to-back at the start of February. Dallas closes out their home slate with Vancouver and rival Houston, and they'll take on the Hyenas in Houston, where Dallas has never won, Saturday of Week 3, January 20th, in primetime on Twitch TV. Jack, what do you think of Dallas's schedule?
Well, it's an interesting schedule. I certainly like how everything's set up here. You know, you got San Antonio to host to open the season. San Antonio, although they didn't win a lot last season, they're definitely probably one of my biggest trap teams. Then they hit the road against Queen City and Houston. That's probably one of the toughest 2-game stretches any team's going to face throughout the entire season. And really throughout the rest, it's going to be a harsh season for them. But if they can pull out if they can go 2-0 against Queen City and Houston, I think they got a playoff bid in the bag right there. And yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Mike, what do you think?
Oh, I'm looking at that, Week 2 game at Queen City. It's going to be nice and cold for the people from Dallas to come up to sunny Buffalo and enjoy the snow. So, that's one that I've got circled to enjoy watching. To finish out their schedule, it is interesting. Like Jack said, they got one at home, a couple away, one at home, couple away, and then at the end of the season, to finish off against Houston, it's going to be another really tough one for them. They've got an uphill climb. It's going to be a tough battle for them, but interesting to see it.
And we'll see Dallas with an offensive coordinator for the first time. Mac Wavy had the number 1 scoring offense in the league last year. He was going up against a weaker defensive conference in the East. we'll see if that magic playbook of his translates into more victories for Dallas. So just to recap, if you're just joining us, we have covered Mexico City, London, Alaska, Vancouver, Carolina, Sioux Falls, Chicago, and Dallas. We've yet to go over Indianapolis, San Fran, Tulsa, Atlanta, Houston, Queen City, Tallahassee, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and St. Louis. And
We have actually not covered Chicago's schedule entirely yet.
Oh, you're right. You are absolutely right. So we're making our rounds, and I'm going to pop into the chat, see what I see. I don't see. There it is. Do Chicago from Vancouver. So we're going to do Chicago next. The Eastern Conference champions from last season now in the Central. Here's a look at the runners-up from last year and what they'll be doing. The Chicago Wildcats have 3 straight at home, capped off with that championship game rematch against Mexico City, and then things get brutal. And I mean real brutal. 4 of their last 6 are on the road, including a date with their former running back and offensive coordinator Deion Hawkins, the Tallahassee Pride in cross conference, the Oklahoma City Renegades, and the Sioux Falls Sparrows. Curtis, give me your impressions of Chicago and all the work they need to do maybe in the first 6 weeks to keep their heads above water.
Well, ultimately, they need to, at least in my opinion, go 4-2 in that span. That'll tell us exactly what kind of Chicago Wildcats team we have in front of us. With that said, taking a look at their roster, I don't see a kicker on that roster, which really surprises me. And I'm gonna give Shan Varner all of the salt for that, because I called that game, sir, against Tallahassee last season, where Jesus Garcia missed a chip shot for an overtime winner. And I am very impressed with the cojones, as it were, that you did not go and get at least a bronze kicker. But that aside, Chicago's got to take care of business first 6 weeks. If they go at least 4-2, we've got still another really good Chicago roster, and they tend to turn it on when the lights are brightest, and that will get going brighter later in the season. So we'll see what Chicago can do, but I'm looking forward to this team and this schedule.
Going to have to conquer some demons with that one, going back to Florida in Week 9. Tom, what type of Chicago team are we going to see at the end of the season with the competition that they have to face on the schedule?
I think Chicago is going to sweep the Central Division. Yeah, I mean, I really don't. I mean, there's 2 expansion teams in that division. Then you have the Renegades who may put up a fight with them. You know. I'm sorry, I forgot Sioux Falls is going to give them some matchup as well. But I do see them. I do see them sweeping Tallahassee and Indianapolis. Until I can see something, I really can't. Say what to expect from those 2 teams until we see them on. But Chicago has Tallahassee on the schedule in Mexico. That rematch for 3 man is going to be something else.
They've got the 2 number 1 seeds from the playoffs from last year on their cross conference schedule.
Yeah, crazy bananas.
Pretty rough. Mike, give us your final thoughts on Chicago.
Well, they do have 3 home games to start off the season, but like I was saying earlier, St. Louis finished the season strong last year, winning 3 out of their last 4. And I think that even if they are normally a team that's better late, I expect to see their winning streak kind of carry on into the beginning of season 10, and they're going to give Chicago some fits in those 2 games in the first 4 weeks of the season. Plus, going back up against Mexico City in prime time, a rematch of the season 9 championship. That's awesome. I can't wait for that game.
See that Pat wants to see the Atlanta Swarm next, so that is what we're going to do. The team that lost in overtime to the Chicago Wildcats in that Eastern Conference final. Here is a look at Atlanta's schedule. Their home opener is against London, followed by a trip to Tallahassee, followed by a trip to Sioux Falls in cross-conference. So back-to-back very challenging road games there. Then they welcome the Alaska Storm to Atlanta, the primetime game on Twitch in Week 4 on Monday night. Their home schedule is quite astonishing. They play Alaska in Week 4, Queen City in Week 6, Mexico City in Week 8, Tallahassee in Week 10. That's a lot of good teams coming to the Hive in the teeth of that schedule. They play Mexico City twice in the last 5 weeks. Jack, what stands out to you about the Swarm's Season 10 run?
I think that's one of the main things that you said there, Cam. Facing off against Mexico City twice in the last 5 games. Mexico City last season, let's remember, as much as I hate to admit this, was not a very strong team towards the end. We went 5-0, then we dropped to like 3-4 about the last 7. But other than that, they got a really tough way to open everything up. They're hosting London. They're heading off Tallahassee and Sioux Falls. That's definitely a very tough road trip right there. But if they can pick up a couple of those early hard road games, and of course they're probably going to sweep Carolina one right there, they got a good shot at going to the playoffs again. Maybe even rematching Chicago.
Damon, would you rather play an expansion team in week 1, a team that's never played a game in their SFL history, but you don't know what you're going to get out of them either, so it may be a little bit more challenging from that perspective? Or would you rather play them later when they're either trying to hit their stride or not hitting their stride? As a team owner, where do you look to have those expansion teams on your schedule?
I would say yes and no, because the reason I would say yes is that I have the upper hand. I know what it takes to win in the SFL. And then you look at the expansion team that really don't have the experience as far as putting together a playbook, knowing exactly what works or so. Some of these guys do, some or so, but the atmosphere of being an owner, from season pass, you have that upper hand versus the guy on the other side of the field. I would rather have an expansion team week 1. If you want to go ahead and revamp the schedule, you can do that. Give me somebody who's, who don't know what's going on. Matter of fact, put San Francisco #1.
Calling out Ryan Moat's team. I see how you are.
I think Moats would take but of course you two can settle that in person. Chris, I'm looking at the Atlanta's travel schedule is somewhat alarming because their cross-conference game is in South Dakota. They got to go to Mexico. They got to go to London. They got to go to Buffalo. They're going to be flying all over the country, all over the world.
Just make sure they have their passports. I think they'll be all right. I mean, ultimately, I think they will take out London. A lot of their matchups against expansion teams, I think Atlanta should win. And they, generally speaking, their first part of the schedule, with the exception of the couple of games, Tallahassee and Alaska, their first 5 games, I think 3-2 is a definitely reasonable result for Atlanta. I really, really think that they have a chance to do some things. That 7-game stretch at the very end, though, is what worries me. You have 4 of those 7 games against Queen City and Mexico City, as mentioned. Plus, you mix in Tallahassee there. You have 2 generally winnable games of that 7. So they're going to have to pull out some upsets if they plan on getting above the 500 mark. So we'll see if they can do that. If not, could be a bit of a struggle for the Swarm later in the season.
Yeah, Mexico City twice, Queen City, Tallahassee. We'll find out if that is the toughest final 5 weeks of any team's schedule out there in the SFL. So left to go: Indianapolis, San Francisco, Tulsa, Houston, Queen City, Tallahassee, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, St. Louis. And True Shot Caller says Tallahassee is next up. So I will grant that. Tallahassee Pride Season 10 schedule. It's on your screen. They start and finish with Carolina, but more importantly at Carolina in week 1. Then they host Atlanta and Queen City before traveling to Vancouver. Goodness gracious, they got to go to Vancouver in week 4 and then London in week 5. That is a tough back-to-back for Tallahassee, but fortunately for them, the Vancouver game is a Saturday night, so they get an extra day to rest those jet-lagged legs before they come back home to host the defending champions, as those two will be reviving that rivalry at Mexico City and at Atlanta late, along with Chicago. Mike, what stands out to you on Tallahassee's slate?
Well, those games against Queen City are going to be fun. Both teams ended the season 9-3 last year, and they both have two highly rated quarterbacks on the roster. That's going to be quite a matchup. It's going to be exciting to see. That travel, that's insane. To go from Vancouver all the way to London, and then at least they're going back home against Mexico City instead of having to fly to Mexico all the way from England. That would be a bit much, but it's quite a brutal schedule. But we'll see how it shakes out for them.
All right, Damon, what you got?
Are you speaking of this schedule here?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, yeah. I see Tallahassee winning week 1. But as we know, they've had these struggles with Atlanta. Those have been really close games that they've played with Atlanta the past few times or so. And we know that rivalry that they have with Queen City, which has been going on multiple seasons now. We get to see what happens with Mexico City. As Ramos Name stated earlier, that when he faces against Tallahassee, he doesn't get any sleep the night or so. But we get to see what happens twice this season versus Mexico City and Tallahassee, and also look and see what they'll be able to do with Chicago and so I do see it's going to be tough in that East, man. It's pretty wicked over there now, man.
All right, who's next? Indy, San Fran, Tulsa, Houston, Queen City, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, St. Louis. Want to hear from the chat? While we hear from the chat room, Curtis, I want to get your quick thoughts on our broadcast schedule through the first 4 weeks. We've seen a lot of matchups. I have told a couple of people I have never been more excited for an SFL season to get started.
Yeah, no kidding. And with the sheer amount of primetime games that are going to be really, really key matchups that are going to be happening on Twitch, and also the flex scheduling to get them into the primetime slot on Sunday nights, I'm super excited about the potential of the matchups that are going to be on the Sunday night games that you call for sure. And the fact that the fans and the community themselves have a say really, really is what drives it home for me, that this is absolutely the place to be during those nights. You don't have that kind of interaction in the NFL. The NFL is not going to come out and say, hey, what game do you want to see? And then they'll put it in a certain spot. They pick those. And this community interaction is what it's about. It's about the community. I am so excited for the matchups that we have in the first few weeks of the season, just because of the potential for some really, really close games. I love calling me some close games. I had a number of them last season. Also had some snoozers, but ultimately it all washes out in the end. So a lot of fun coming this season in what's going to be a landmark 10th season for the SFL.
More votes for the Sharks than anybody else. So we look at Ryan Motz's San Francisco Sharks next. They start at home against Indianapolis. They've got a home game with Vancouver as well through the first 3 weeks. Then 4 of 5 on the road, including trips to Dallas and Tulsa down south. They've got a date with Alaska 2 times in 4 weeks between weeks 7 and 10 before hosting 3 Texas teams in their final 4 games. Jack, how does San Francisco's schedule shape up for them, and where are they going to meet their maker?
Well, if you're going to talk about where they're going to meet their maker per se, it's going to be at the end of the season. From Houston from their home game against Houston through, that's going to be an absolutely brutal schedule. You're hosting Houston, then you're heading out to Vancouver and Alaska, not in that order. Then you host Dallas and Alaska, then you head off to Houston, then you host San Antonio. That is not an easy schedule for anybody to play. And so they're going to have to win their first 4 or 5 games by pretty convincing margins there to be ready for that latter half of the season.
Mike, what do you think about the Sharks?
Well, like Jack said, I mean, the end of that schedule is pretty brutal. It's interesting. With an expansion team, we just don't know what we're going to get. But when you have a mind like Ryan Moats, who's been there in the NFL himself and knows what it takes to win, it's not going to be a question of, game planning or how to put the plan together to win. But the schedule's just rough. Like Jack said, starting with Houston and beyond, it's going to be tough to win some of those games.
All right, I've seen some St. Louis Gladiators in the house. Let's see what the Gladiators' schedule has to offer us in Season 10. Start off with 2 road games in the conference, at Chicago and at Indianapolis. The Gladiators taking on their former head coach very early. St. Louis ends with 3 of their last 4 at home, including 3 straight against Indianapolis, Sioux Falls, and Tulsa. It's interesting, the last 5 weeks of the season, St. Louis does not play a team that made the playoffs last year. Chris, do you think that is going to help them get into the playoffs and over the hump finally, or is that tougher start going to send St. Louis sputtering again?
As mentioned earlier, they won 3 out of the last 4 the last part of the season last year. So I really have to give them kind of the late season nod. As far as will it help them? Yes. Sioux Falls, I think, is the toughest matchup of those last 5 games. And with Tulsa in Indianapolis and Oklahoma City, Tulsa being the expansion team, as is Indianapolis, it's going to depend on what kind of early season Tulsa and Indianapolis have. That'll tell us a story as far as that goes. But I don't see them losing to Oklahoma City, and with a retooled roster, with fixing a few front end mistakes from last season, that St. Louis could be one of those sleeper teams that gets into the playoffs, albeit they may sneak in, but they have an opportunity to do some things late in the season.
Jack, St. Louis takes on Chicago 2 times in the first 4 weeks. Would you rather have Chicago early or rather have them late?
Well, personally, I don't have a choice. I have to play Chicago early. But, yeah, I would probably just get them out of the way. It seemed like – no, scratch that. I'll take them late when their bloodlust for Season 9 is finally over and they're back to being normal football players and they're not out to kill half the league. And, of course, St. Louis, Chicago, that's always been a big sports market rivalry. And have them playing in 4 weeks of each other, that's going to be one hoot of a matchup.
Yeah, good point there on Chicago being out for blood here for the way they went down in front of thousands and thousands of people on Twitch.tv's championship game. Damon, you get to play St. Louis. Is that the first meeting between the Gladiators and Hyenas? I don't think.
No, actually, this would be the second meeting between the Hyenas and Gladiators. I know that I stated that Chicago makes the Central, but I wouldn't be surprised, man, if this St. Louis team surprised a lot of people, including myself, this season. They have 2 seasons where they did not have any progression at all, besides last season when they won 3 of the last 4, as Curtis stated. So I wouldn't sleep on this team. Give them some credit, man, for sticking in there and not giving up, folding, after 2 disappointing seasons. And I would like to. I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen week 2 versus their old offensive coordinator and head coach of James Richards. I'd like to see what's going to go on there, how heated this game will be come week 2. I would like to see all the trash talking in the daily discussion.
Oh, man, and while we're at it, let's get to Indianapolis because that is the Red Devils' home opener. At San Francisco week 1, they also are in prime time in week 2 for Monday Night Football. The 8 o'clock second game of that doubleheader, the late kickoff, the Red Devils hosting their former team, the St. Louis Gladiators, Richard's former team, that is. That's going to be fun. The Red Devils start with 3 of their first 4 on the road, but all 3 games are against teams that are either new or did not make the playoffs. Indianapolis also gets Tulsa London in cross conference. So 4 of Indianapolis's 8 games will be against expansion teams, and they don't have to go to London. London comes to them. They just have to go to San Francisco to open up the Sharks home building. They get two at the end of the season against Sioux Falls and Tulsa. Ultimately for Indianapolis, not the worst of the worst schedules for this upstart expansion team. Mike, how do you see Indianapolis falling, and is Indianapolis the expansion team to watch, or do you think there's another out there that is going to win that battle?
Well, they're definitely a team to watch. I mean, like you mentioned, their schedule's setting them up for success. I think, playing for expansion teams in their lineup is going to be a helpful thing for them. It's a very evenly split schedule. If you look at the first 6 weeks, you have 3 home, 3 away. The last 6 weeks, 3 home, 3 away. So there's really nothing that's going to throw off their vibe all that much. But I mean, come on, I have to give props to the expansion team out there in London, right? I mean, 2 of my boys are on that team. I can't say Indianapolis is the expansion team to watch when I got my boys over there in London. So we'll see how that shakes out, though.
Yeah, I can say absolutely that Indianapolis is the team to watch. So you don't have to take the bullet for this one. I definitely will.
There you go.
Curtis, Indianapolis and San Francisco playing in that opening game in prime time. How much pressure is there on those two teams to be in that big moment against one another, to go out and make a statement right away?
Well, there's something to be said about getting a hot start in the season. There's also something to be said to getting a hot start to your franchise, which is a different kind of role entirely. With that said, one of these teams is going to start out their existence in the SFL 0-1. I have my picks that I'll keep silent as far as who is going to win this one. But either way, I don't see this game anywhere close to a lopsided victory for either side. It's one of those it's one of those halves to watch, because we don't know what we're going to be seeing, because we don't know either of these two rosters. We know that both are very prominent personalities. Both are run by very prominent personalities in the SFL community, and that in itself should make a pretty interesting dynamic of what to see on the field. So I don't know what to expect, other than I think it's going to be a close game.
OKC is the next request, and we'll stick with Curtis here. They also have 3 home and 3 away on the front and back half of their schedule. But Oklahoma City is one of 2 teams that has 3 straight road games, and it's not the easiest of schedules: at Chicago, at Dallas, at Indy. The Dallas-Oklahoma City rivalry remains, and the Renegades host Carolina, their other cross-conference game. They start at home against Tulsa. They finish at home against Chicago and St. Louis. So, Curtis, the Renegades have obviously been on the doorstep. They were never closer to making a run in the modern day SFL than they were in that opportunity to beat Vancouver in week 12. So how does this team take the next step forward, and where could it all go wrong for the Renegades?
It could all go wrong in that 6, 7, 8, but it starts with a good start in weeks 1 through 5. In my estimation, they have to go at least 3-2, if not 4-1 in those first 5 weeks. That's going to really set the tone for that OKC schedule, because they have to be well above 500 going up against Chicago, Dallas, and Indianapolis. Indianapolis will see twice in a 5-week span, so they'll be able to see what kind of look the Red Devils are giving them when they go into that week 8 rematch. So that's going to be a determining factor in that conference. But ultimately, it all starts with a good start, and I'd not want to be OKC going up against St. Louis as the last game of the season.
Yeah,
and
good point.
Gotta make sure, if you are OKC, that you take care of business before that matchup, because there are not many better teams in the league in late season, especially in the last game of the season, than St. Louis. So you got to take care of business. Don't leave it down to the last game.
Gladiators beating Chicago last week in week 12, which shocked a lot of people. Jack, the Aztecs have a history with the Renegades, not on the Aztec schedule this go around, but how do you see the Renegade season playing out, and what matchup are you most looking forward to checking out?
Well, when it comes to checking out, it's going to be that last game against St. Louis. St. Louis, as Curtis said, they're always a team that essentially plays only the last like 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and that might actually be a good checkpoint for St. Louis to see how they play in Week 3 versus 12, and that really is going to be interesting, along with the 2 Tulsa matchups. Going to be a battle for whoever can win the more tornadoes, I guess. I don't know. But also, I am still very disappointed. I swear, are you trying to separate all of Mexico City's rivals
No,
and putting us in the East?
just trying
Are
to
you
make
trying?
y'all suffer a little bit for winning a championship. That's all.
We'll
There's never
take the
been a
challenge. We'll
repeat
take-
champion in the SFL before.
Not even Queen City.
No?
Hmm.
Why'd you
Okay.
say it like
Nope.
that?
I don't know. I do stupid voices from time to time. I'm 15, okay? Just cut me some slack.
I think you cut your own slack there.
That was hysterical. I'm like, what is that from? I was going through my brain trying to find the movie reference. No idea.
I don't even really do it for movies. I just kind of do it off the top of my head.
You need to start your own podcast where you just do analysis in a bunch of different voices.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like
man.
Don't give them any
different
ideas.
characters.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, we've got about 11 minutes left in the show and 4 more teams to get to. Tulsa, Houston, Queen City, San Antonio. And it looks like Damon wants to show Houston next. No problem, Damon. We'll get to it. The Houston Hyenas Season 10 schedule. They start with 3 at home like Chicago, Sioux Falls, Alaska, and Dallas. And those are 3 pretty challenging opponents to face early. Sioux Falls and who is St. Louis is the other conference opponent. They do have 4 of 5 on the road between week 6 and week 10, including 3 West Coast trips to San Francisco, Alaska, and Vancouver. They're all bottled up at the right in that the thick of that season. So, Damon, what do you think of your schedule here?
I love it. 3 games at home to open the season. And then I just love the schedule. Thank you so much. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay. I don't often hear that out of teams, but we'll see. We'll see if they're thanking me at the end of the season.
I get Alaska week 2, in Houston and not in blizzard cold. I can't stand winter games as far as my team playing. I love watching them, but I can't stand my team playing in winter games. Snow games, that is. I'm sorry. But yeah, man, looking forward to playing against San Antonio there. We had the week 3, I think, last season. Get a week this year, going into their home. Pretty much that would be, I would say, both San Antonio and versus Vancouver would be redemption games. Reason being is because we split 1-1 both teams, and we all know what happened that last game of the season. And Greg himself is still scratching his head as how in the heck his 55-0 shutout. So I'm talking to him yesterday.
Damon, we'll see how much you're thanking Cam and the powers that be after you go 2-3 through the first 5 games.
Whoa.
2-3. What?
2-3. I got Sioux Falls, I got Alaska, and I got Vancouver beating you.
Man, who told you that?
I mean, I told me that.
Hey, Simeon.
I'll give you your win against Dallas, and I'll give you your win against San Antonio, but I don't see unless you
Pull the
pull
card.
the upsets.
Pull the card. I mean, who do I need to upset?
No.
Only team I need to upset is Alaska. That's the only team. that
I mean, you
have
could
not-
be upset in Houston with that 2-3 record after 5 games.
You think I'm a loser versus Sioux Falls?
Yeah.
I think Sioux Falls is going to surprise a lot of people. Yeah.
And you
Alright.
think we're going to lose to Vancouver again?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And to San Antonio even.
Save
Let's throw them
it
in.
for the week 1 podcast, Mike. What do you what do you think? What do you think of Houston? Houston at Alaska, at Vancouver, at Dallas. 3 of their last 4 games. Any
Well, that's the
problems
thing.
there?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it is great to have
Absolutely.
3 home games to open the season, but to finish the season with 3 out of the last 4 on the road. Well, we say 3 of the last 4. It's 5 out of the last 7 are all on the road. So you do get that nice kiss at the beginning of the year with 3 home games, but the end of that schedule is just absolutely brutal. So if Curtis is right and they go 2 and 3 out of the first 5 games, and then all those away games at the end, Damon, you got an uphill battle, my friend.
Oh, it's going to be a piece of cake.
55-0.
Trust me, young fella.
Hey, Damon, by the way,
Okay.
you got your own command in Twitch chat.
It's in my back pocket, man. Hey, you know. Ronnie,
Tulsa,
tell him again. Tell him
Tulsa,
again, Ronnie.
Queen City, and San Antonio left. Let's take a look at the Tulsa Desperados. They have 2 straight on the road. Their home opener will be against their fellow division expansion newcomer, the Indianapolis Red Devils. So 2 on the road, then 3 straight at home, but 2 on the road to end the season too. In total, 4 of their 5 divisional road games are the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks of the season. Will that help or hurt Tulsa in getting something rolling? What does Damon think?
Sorry about that. I was typing, Cam.
Yeah.
Hey, the Desperados got to come in, man, and they got an first 2 games. You know, Oklahoma City, which is going to be that in-state rivalry, and then Chicago. You know, who is going to be that matchup versus the offensive coordinator versus the owner of Chicago. We'll see how Dion does on his own. You know, to hold his hand and. And then show him the ropes, but I don't know how far the Desperados are going to go in the Central, division, because you got Sioux Falls there, and then they got cross country rivals versus Carolina, and we know Carolina can pretty much put them some points when they want to.
Keep forgetting that X Factor Ronnie Nickens is on Oklahoma City. I'm like, why is he cheering for Oklahoma City so hard? Well, he's
Yeah.
quarterback. So I'm just gonna
gone.
I'm gonna have to get used to that. So yeah, Oklahoma City in week 1 getting Tulsa, and then rematch with not a rematch, but a new rivalry potentially with Chicago and Deion Hawkins' former team. 2 teams left. We'll get to them as quickly as we can. The Queen City Corsairs start at Mexico City. It's been a while since we talked about that. We talked about their 2 awesome cross-conference games versus Dallas and at Alaska in week 2 and 11, respectively. So their cross-conference schedule is at the beginning and the end, interestingly enough. The 2 games at the end with London and week 3 and week 7 against Tallahassee stands out immediately. They play Tallahassee and Mexico City twice each in the first 7 weeks of the season. A brutal task for the Corsairs. Mike, your thoughts on your team's schedule?
I can't wait. I mean, you say brutal task. I see victories week. Let's see, 1 through 12. So
This guy. Okay.
Hey, listen, I'm positive for my team. It's Buffalo. Buffalo needs some love. If anybody watched the NFL game today, we need something. Okay.
Right.
I mean, it can be argued not even Buffalo watched the Buffalo game in the NFL.
No, they weren't there. Yeah, they got delayed in
all
the
they
flight.
did was watch.
They didn't make it. Yeah, but that week 10 game, week 12 game, obviously, both of those are very special to me. With my sons playing for London, and can't wait to crush them both. The week 10 games actually one day after Jeffrey's birthday, so I'll be handing him a loss for his birthday this year. Not exactly the best present a dad can give, but it's something. So
I mean, maybe a thank
Call
you
the cops
card.
on you for that.
Well, he's already telling me. I mean, he plays free safety, so he's going to be going up against me a lot at tight end, and he says he's going to pick off every pass that's thrown my way and run them all back for touchdowns and laugh at me every time. So,
Nice.
hey, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to it either way.
I will jump in for just a moment and say, basically, I just taking a realistic look at the schedule, that first 7 weeks is absolutely brutal, and there's no getting around that. And I can be positive about my team all I want, but I got to be a realist about it. 4-3 through the first 7 is, I think, a goal that Queen City should set, and after that, I think the rest of the schedule is in their favor. So 4-3 for the first 7, and then even if as long as they stay over 500 or better, possibly even losing 1 or 2 in the last 5, I think that Queen City will be straight. But looking at it from a broadcaster's perspective, those first 7 weeks are absolutely ridiculously brutal.
Chris, of the three first games, you've got Mexico City, a team you've never played before,
Yep.
and at their house for the banner raising. You've got Dallas, who's still ticked off. I mean, they were a quarter away from winning a championship, and Queen City stomped on those dreams. And then Tallahassee, a place where Queen City got obliterated the last time they went down there. In that week 2 contest last year. Of those 3 games, what's going to be the most challenging?
The most challenging? It's always challenging to go down to Tallahassee to play. The Lions Den is a place where not a lot of teams have a lot of great success other than Tallahassee. With that said, well, okay, fair. Fair enough. Tallahassee, I think, is the most challenging of those 3, mostly because of familiarity, because we've played them a lot. Mexico City is a close second to that, though.
All right, last but not least, San Antonio, and I'll get to Jack Brown's reaction to the Vaqueros schedule. They're at Dallas versus San Francisco, at Alaska, then 3 straight at home, finished with 4 of 6 on the road, including a trip down to Mexico City for the rematch of the Hail Mary game for cross-conference play, and at San Francisco to finish out the season against the Sharks. If San Antonio throws a Hail Mary and beats Mexico City this go-around, that
ain't gonna happen.
I quit. It's over.
I mean,
so Jack, what do you think? Vancouver also two out of 3 weeks in week 7 and week 9. How does San Antonio's schedule look for them?
Yeah, don't be thinking they're going to be throwing a Hail Mary on us anytime soon. But overall, I think San Antonio, they can make some noise this season. Last year, although they went 3-9, they played in essentially every single one of their games. And as Simeon over here knows, last week's season was a lot of fun for him against San Antonio.
Oh man, he brought it up again.
I'll never stop bringing it up with you.
Damn.
But yeah, overall, they're definitely going to be the trap team of this season. I don't know if they're going to do that well. They're definitely going to be a force in the Western Conference, even if it's just like, a 5-7 playoff.
Well, we perfectly thank you, panel, so much for being here to analyze all of our teams and all of our league. Perfectly did it in an hour and a half's time. We'll put week 1 back up on the board for you. That is your opening week slate. Can't say that the season's going to start on January 7th anymore. It probably, we know for a fact it's going to start sooner. When and at what time, we're not totally completely sure. Hopefully we'll have that answer for you in the next week. But Queen City and Mexico City will kick us off. I want to personally thank each and every one of you one by one. Chris Curtis, thanks so much for being here. I look forward to calling some more games with you this season.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe that next time I'll actually take the color spot for you so you can actually do your play-by-play thing.
Yeah, I think you're getting to the point where you might be all right there. You've been around long enough. You're getting to be a savvy yet.
Getting there. We'll see.
Right. Jack Brown, thanks so much, buddy, for being here. Good luck on defending your title.
Oh, he's saying good luck. I will defend it. And
okay.
Darn.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I can't say here's another title. I have to just wish you good luck and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, because the SFL will blow up if you say that.
Hashtag SFL is rigged.
And pre-recorded.
No. Damon, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, no problem. You're more than welcome, sir. Anytime. The pleasure is all mine.
Mike, this was your first time on a call with the SFL Network. How did we treat you?
Well, other than your initial introduction where you called me older than dirt, I believe was the phrase. I guess I'd have to check that.
I don't think I said that.
We can check the VOD for evidence. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, we'll check that one back up. But no, it was great. I'm happy to be here. Excited to be part of the league. Excited to have a winter activity for me and my sons to do while we stay inside here in Western New York, so we don't have to endure cold. But it's going to be great. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
And with that, thanks once again to our panel, everybody that was in the chat room tonight, making tonight special and great. That's a wrap on the Season 10 schedule release show. I'm your SFL Commissioner, Cameron Irvine. Week 1 starts in Mexico with the Corsairs and Aztecs. We're just about all closed up. 216 user player spots nearly filled, and we'll have some signings later tonight to announce as well that have been sitting on that transaction wire all day while we prep for this show. For all of our crew, I'm SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine saying good night, and Season 10 will be here before you know it. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.